Psst.
Hello, sunshine.
Is
It's Mrs. Klein.
and Mr. Creighton, and we are talking over each other because we're so excited to get this to you guys.
Woohoo!
So we're going back now. We just went through lesson 8, which was the Byzantine Empire. Now we're going back to lesson 3, looking at the legacy of the Roman Empire. And the reason we did this is because part of the Byzantine Empire is the legacy of the Roman Empire.
Exactly.
And so this is going to be pages 41 through 51 of the textbook. And the guiding question is, to what extent have the contributions of ancient Rome influenced modern society?
All right, you guys, and we've got some vocabulary words, so you want to make sure, remember, they're blue in your history books. The vocabulary for this lesson is aqueduct, corruption, decline, empire, mosaic, philosophy, proverb, Roman Empire, and scribe.
All right, guys, so going through the introduction a little bit, again, the legacy of the Roman Empire. At its height, around 200 CE, the Roman Empire spanned the whole of the Mediterranean world, from northern Africa to the Scottish border, from Spain to Syria.
But the empire did not last. By the year 500 CE, the western half of this great empire had collapsed.
As one historian wrote, Rome perished, yet it lived on. The medieval world would pass on many aspects of Roman culture that still affect us today.
In this lesson, you're going to discover how and why the Roman Empire fell. Then you will learn how Rome's influence continues to live on in so many ways today, in art, architecture and engineering, language and writing, and philosophy, law, and citizenship.
All right, guys, looking at section 1, the end of the Roman Empire in the West. There was no single reason for the end of the Roman Empire. Instead, historians point to a number of problems that combined to bring about its fall.
All right. Political instability. Rome never solved the problems of how to peacefully transfer political power to a new leader.
Economic and social problems. Besides political instability, the empire suffered from economic and social problems. To finance Rome's huge armies, its citizens had to pay heavy taxes. These taxes weakened the economy and drove many people into poverty. Trade also suffered.
Other social problems plagued the empire, including growing corruption and a decline in the spirit of citizenship.
Weakening frontiers. A final problem was the weakening of the empire's frontiers. The huge size of the empire made it hard to defend, and sometimes took weeks for leaders in Rome to communicate with its generals.
Oh my gosh, long distance communication without cell phones.
Really hard.
All right, so now we're talking about the fall of Rome. In 330 CE, the Emperor Constantine, that we've already been learning about, took a step that changed the future of the Roman Empire. He moved his capital 850 miles east to the ancient city of Byzantium.
Later, it was called Constantinople. The vast empire was usually ruled by 2 emperors, one based in Rome and one based in Constantinople.
The emperors in Rome soon found themselves threatened by invading Germanic tribes, and the western half of the empire began to dissolve into separate kingdoms.
Rome's fall did not mean the end of Roman civilization. The influence of Rome lived on through the medieval period and all the way to our time.
All right, now we're going to talk about the legacy of Roman art. The Romans were especially influenced by the art of the Greeks.
Romans added their own talents and tastes to what they learned from other cultures.
Romans were also great patrons or sponsors of art. Wealthy families decorated their homes with statues and colorful murals and mosaics.
About 1,000 years after the fall of the empire, during the period called the Renaissance, Roman art was rediscovered.
Today, you can see a number of statues in Washington, D.C. that reflect a strong Roman influence.
All right, guys, looking at section 3, the legacy of Roman architecture and engineering. The Romans were skilled and clever builders. In their architecture and engineering, they borrowed ideas from the Greeks and other peoples.
All right, in architecture, the Romans learned how to use the arch, the vault, and the dome to build huge structures.
The Romans used concrete to help them build much bigger arches than anyone had attempted before.
The Romans also invented a new kind of stadium, large open-air structures that could seat thousands of spectators.
Modern football stadiums still use this feature.
You can also see a Roman influence in the design of many modern churches, banks, and government buildings. A fine example is the Capitol building in the home of the U.S. Congress in Washington, D.C.
All right, guys, looking at engineering. They were the greatest builders, the Romans were, of roads, bridges, and aqueducts in the ancient world.
More than 50,000 miles of road connected Rome with the frontiers of the empire.
Their techniques set the standard of Rome building for 2,000 years.
The Romans also set a new standard for building aqueducts. They created a system of aqueducts for Rome that brought water from about 60 miles away to the homes of the city's wealthiest citizens, as well as to its public baths and fountains.
All right, guys. Section 4 is the legacy of Roman language and writing. An especially important legacy of Rome for people in medieval times was the Romans' language, Latin.
Latin continued to be used by scholars and the Roman Catholic Church.
Educated European nobles learned Latin so they can communicate with their peers in other countries.
Latin remains extremely influential. Several modern European languages developed from Latin, including Italian, Spanish, and French.
In fact, we still use the Latin alphabet, although Latin has 23 letters and English has 26.
All right, you can see the influence of Latin in many of the words that we use today.
The names of several months come from Latin. August honors Caesar Augustus, and September comes from the Latin word meaning the 7th month.
Many English words start with Latin prefixes.
Other English words come from Latin root words.
Even Latin proverbs are still in use. For example, if you look at the reverse side of a U.S. penny, you'll see the U.S. motto, E pluribus unum, out of many, one.
Finally, we still use Roman numerals, which is a system that uses letters to write numbers.
All right, moving on to the 5th section, you guys, which is the legacy of Roman philosophy, law, and citizenship. Roman philosophy, law, and ideas about citizenship were greatly influenced by the Greeks.
A philosophy called Stoicism. A Greek school of thought that was especially popular in Rome was Stoicism.
To the Stoics, the one truly good thing in life was to have a good character, which meant having virtues such as self-control and courage.
All right, guys, looking at law and justice. Roman law covered marriages, inheritances, and contracts or agreements between people, as well as countless other areas of daily life.
Another legacy of the Romans was the Roman idea of justice. The Romans believed that there was a universal law of justice that came from nature, and that by this natural law, every person had rights.
Citizenship. When Rome first began expanding its power in Italy, to be a Roman was to be a citizen of the city-state of Rome. Over time, however, Rome's leaders gradually extended citizenship to all free people in the empire.
The idea of citizenship as both a privilege and a responsibility has descended from Roman times to our very own.
Regardless of where they were born, all citizens have the same responsibilities.
And all enjoy the same basic rights spelled out in the Constitution.
All right, guys, so talking about the lesson summary now. In this lesson, you explored the rich legacy of ancient Rome. The Roman Empire fell more than 1,500 years ago, but it left a lasting influence throughout Western culture that you experience nearly every day.
All right, in art, architecture, and engineering, artists still follow Roman styles in sculpture, mosaics, glass, and other art forms. Roman influences are seen in the arches, domes, and vaults of many modern churches, banks, and government buildings. The Romans also were talented engineers whose construction methods and standards lasted thousands of years.
Language and writing. Many words and word parts in modern languages, including English, French, and Spanish, developed from the Roman language, Latin. Roman numerals appear today on clocks, in books, and in TV and movie credits.
Finally, philosophy, law, and citizenship. Roman ideals such as the philosophy of Stoicism, rule of law, and justice shape the law codes and government structures of many nations today. Examples of the continuing influence of Roman ideas include today's law courts, written law, such as the U.S. Constitution, and our representative form of government.
All right, guys, looking at the guiding question again for the legacy of the Roman Empire. To what extent have the contributions of ancient Rome influenced modern society?
All right, you guys, and don't forget about those vocabulary terms: aqueduct, corruption, decline, empire, mosaic, philosophy, proverb, Roman Empire, and scribe.
All right, guys.
All the best.